What's good, class, and welcome back to another edition of Mr. Fitzgerald's biology class. Today we're wrapping up our organelles with talking about plant-specific organelles. So as we go on this adventure, remember it's going to be only plants that have these things. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the large vacuole. So inside of a plant cell, there's going to be a large central vacuole that's used for storing food and water inside of plants. Okay, this gives them the ability to keep water available if there's ever a drought or lack of water in their environment, as well as keeping food available for any times where they're not able to perform photosynthesis for long periods of time. So this is a very unique adaptation for plants because the vacuoles in animal cells, as we talked about previously, is only temporary and very small because animals are able to go get food when they need to. Usually they have motion or movement that they can use. Plant cells are usually stable and stay in one spot, mostly because of this chunky exterior piece here. So they can't go to the resources that they need. They have to store up what they can inside their cells. So another specific thing, that chunky outside part that I was talking about, is a cell wall. So you can see it nicely in this picture here. This outer component is the cell wall. And this is a structural barrier for the cell on the outside. So in addition to having a cell membrane on the inside, plant cells do have a cell membrane. They also have this more rigid, flexible yet tough exterior called the cell wall. Now this actually keeps plant cells from bursting because what plant cells will naturally do is pull more resources in, more water into them than they could naturally hold because they have this external barrier to keep them from bursting. So the cell wall basically kind of keeps the cell compressed a little bit to keep that swollen with water plant cell from rupturing and spilling water everywhere. Now, this material that it's made of, the flexible fiber it's made out of, it's called cellulose, and that's what is known as a polysaccharide, or many sugars. And that's going to come up very soon. But cellulose is a very structurally durable material that allows this plant cell to basically maintain its rigid shape and allow more water in without actually bursting at the same time. So this keeps it from reaching a point where it'll fall apart, and it maintains its homeostasis with the external. So it does help in a little bit of filtering materials, just like the cell membrane as an extra barrier. But overall, its main function is to keep that shape of the plant cell and keep it from popping, from having too much extra water stored up inside of it. All right, so let's talk about cellulose a little bit deeper. So cellulose is what's called an insoluble polysaccharide. Things that are insoluble means that they don't dissolve. So in this case, if I put this cellulose in water, it will not dissolve. It stays as a long strand or long fibers, okay? And it's actually made up of little tiny glucose molecules all put together. So this idea of polysaccharide, poly means many, so there's many glucose molecules stuck together, and saccharide means sugar or glucose. So this insoluble polysaccharide on the outside of the cell is basically keeping these plant cells and some bacteria cells from rupturing. That gives them extra support and stability that we already talked about with the cell wall. All right, finally, the chloroplast, the last piece that's very unique to a plant cell. So this is where photosynthesis is done. This is often why they have that green color, mostly because there's a specific pigment called chlorophyll inside these chloroplasts that allows it to absorb that sunlight and transmit that energy that it's absorbing into chemical energies in the form of making sugars. So it is a very useful thing for plants because, again, they cannot move, they cannot go get food and eat it in the same way that animal cells can. So they have to produce their own, and they use the chloroplast for that. All right, so now what you're going to do is use your cell diagram worksheet, which should be the next link in the Canvas module. I will know if you watch this video if you fill it out correctly. It's my test to see how many of you watch. So each of these is a text box, so you will have to fill in and label all the parts of the cell. There's an animal cell and a plant cell, so make sure you have them appropriately labeled on which cell type they are, as well as the parts that I'm pointing at with the arrows, okay? Additionally, down here at the bottom, I want the functions of the organelles that are all listed. There are quite a few of them. So I want those functions listed in 5 words or less. Do not give me Google definitions. Do not give me long definitions. I want them as short and sweet and to the point to what their job is in the cell as possible. If you're doing this well, you should have 5 words or less for each of these. All the boxes labeled in and submitted on Canvas before 11:59 p.m. tonight. That's all I have for today, and have a good one.